When Disciplines Meet is a series of podcasts from the Scottish Graduate School of Social Science, the UK's largest doctoral training partnership for social scientists. With these podcasts, we aim to discuss the aims, nature, and practical experiences of interdisciplinary approaches to research. This episode is on the topic of the PhD disciplinary journey. My name is Laura Young and I'm an interdisciplinary researcher and host of this podcast series. And on this episode, I am joined by 3 researchers, all doing their PhDs based across Scotland. João Magalhães is from the University of Edinburgh. Welcome.
Thank you.
We also have Blessing Bulaun, who is from the Robert Gordon University. Welcome.
Thank you.
And also Jivantika Satyarthi from Heriot-Watt University. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us on this episode of the podcast. And I want to just kick off with hopefully a simple question. Maybe Jivantika, what discipline are you from?
Okay, so I have changed my career from starting from being an architect, practicing for some time, going to becoming an urban planner, and now I'm finally an urban researcher, dipping into different field altogether, which is environmental psychology, as something which is I'm exploring right now. So if you talk about which discipline I am from, I do identify myself as an urban planner and researcher, trying to explore more domains per se.
I love when a simple question gets, okay, so as an initial one, but actually I think that's really interesting to hear the background and journey you've been on. João, what about you? What discipline are you from?
It's because it's not an easy question, I think, overall. I was listening to you, I was like, so what I'm saying now? Well, right now I'm in social policy, which is a very specific discipline within the UK, not even in Europe or global in general. But I have, I'm a medical doctor as my background, so I'm from health science as well. And in general, I think I'm as a political science as well. So it's difficult for me to understand a little bit which area I'm currently on, but specifically social policy seems the one that is more close to my current research, I would say.
Blessing, 3 for 3. What discipline would you say that you're from?
Okay, so I'm a social scientist. I've been all my career years, but recently I've decided to delve into other paths, and I'm finding it very interesting because I've come to believe that the future of research is going to be interdisciplinary, actually, bringing everything together and making sense out of it.
And do you think that's something that lots of people understand in the academic environment?
Not at all. I will tell you an amazing story. In my application days, when I was trying to get into school, I sent different proposals to different supervisors, and they keep telling me, why not stick to one? Choose environment. Why not choose AI? Why not just be specific? Why are you bringing 3 different disciplines together? And I tried to rewrite and resubmit, but I wasn't getting what I wanted until I finally got a supervisor that said, I'm interested in this. Actually, I'm an interdisciplinary supervisor and I'm interested in your project. So that's how I got, that was the first time I even heard the word interdisciplinary. Then I went to research and I'm like, this is actually what I'm doing. But I didn't know that was what I was doing at that point. So.
Yeah, it's nice when a word actually marries up with what you've been feeling with your own research. And Jivantika, we kind of sit in the same field actually. My research is in the environmental space as well. And your research is looking at sustainable urban drainage systems, things that help us with issues like flooding. In what ways has your research taken an interdisciplinary approach?
Okay, that's a wonderful question because I never thought that the approach that I'm gonna take for this aspect of my research would be coming from the background of environmental psychology. So I'm looking at sustainable urban drainage systems and how they can be designed in a better way, specifically for urban neighborhoods, such that they can lead to creating soundscapes, which means the sound environment, which is more nature imbibing, and how it can eventually lead to restoration from stress for urban residents. So we are talking about not just floods, or we are not just talking about SUDS helping us, deal with floods or attenuate water and floods. We're also looking at how can their multiple benefit, which it's intended to have, can also be realized through, promoting well-being eventually of the local residents. So I know it sounds very complex to think about, and it's looking at civil engineering aspect, architecture aspect, as well as environmental psychology, with the dominance of environmental psychology in coming to the solution. It has been challenging, but I think that's what majorly I'm looking at to answer your question. Like, eventually, this is what I'm looking at finally.
And these sustainable urban drainage systems, I mean, first and foremost, were created to help with issues like flooding.
Yeah.
But we've kind of recognised that they have this much wider role. I guess, how advanced do you feel the field of interdisciplinary research in this topic is? Do you feel it's something people are comfortable with? Is there still resistance when, I guess I'm imagining a bunch of engineers sitting around a table and you come in and start talking about soundscapes. Are they comfortable? Are they ready for that? Or where is that research sitting at?
That's again a very good question. I think it's contradictory. The perspectives of people are very contradictory. If you're talking about SUDS engineers itself, I have interviewed them. So there was somebody who was like really fascinated about like looking at SUDS with an approach of soundscape. But this is a person who's pro SUDS and he really wants to make a change. And he's ready to work in different domains as well. So that's coming from an engineering mindset. However, if you talk to another engineer who's just worked coldly in just like sitting on a desk and designing SUDS, which are based on standards, I think they would be like just overblown by the fact that there could be something new that can be thought about in this direction. And whatever they have worked with respect to standards as they have laid down on paper are wrong, or they are not like fully sufficing what the objective of SUDS is. So there are contradictory views, but yes, I think the view towards a positive aspect is very slowly changing. But this change is still very slow, is what I would feel, especially if you talk about the engineering aspect. However, architects, landscape architects, they have a different approach. There are architects coming forward with the biodiversity net gain aspect through SUDS as well. So that's also happening. But yes, it's like, some give away and some taking away. Sort of a situation.
Finding that compromise, but actually something that's interesting that both you and Blessing as well, you've brought up is that sometimes you just need that key person who's willing to support you or be open to these different ideas. And Blessing, your research is focused on women's lived experiences in oil polluted areas. Could you just tell us a little bit about the research that you're doing and the interdisciplinary aspect of that?
Yeah, so like you said, I'm looking at the lived experiences of women in oil polluted region. These are real women experiencing real life issues due to oil pollution that has happened over time in their community. And as a result, they face different kinds of issues. So I'm coming to look at it from the aspect of health, where public health comes in, where I want to design a health communication strategy that will cater for their situation. And then the environmental aspect, again, is what comes in. How has the biodiversity has been affected, and what are the environmental issues that these women are facing due to the oil pollution? And then as a social scientist, I want to understand them from the social aspect. How is it affecting them mentally, emotionally, and also bringing all these three together is where the interdisciplinary aspect of my research comes in.
And how do you find bringing those aspects together? Because actually, when I think about somewhere that's been polluted with something like oil, the environmental aspect is quite obvious. You can often see it. And that's in a way easy to quantify by what's there on the ground. But then when thinking about people and communities and public health, that seems a little bit harder to dig into. And certainly I can't imagine doing those two things together. So how have you been able to bring those disciplines together for the research that you're doing?
I wouldn't say it was easy at first because most supervisors ran away from helping me out. But finally I got one, and we've been working on developing a framework that will cater for all of them. And at the end of the day, I'm sure we'll come up with something very good.
And I think that's really important, actually, especially as a framework that can be taken to so many other places that are impacted by these. But I know, João, public health is something that you're passionate about. And you mentioned that actually you come from a medical doctor background, but you have now moved or are opening up into welfare policy. And I know that your research is based around the EU. Could you tell us a little bit about your research and the interdisciplinary aspects of that?
I would say that I moved, but I still very much within the public health mental framework. And I think it's connected a little bit to all the research that we already described. So you have the connections with the environmental part and the mental health well-being, even though the community to affect you, of course, in terms of the impacts of air pollution and air quality on people's lives. And I think all of that speaks to the same purpose that we have. It's like to improve people's health, well-being, quality of life. So what I think that, because I specialize myself in public health, so I made this journey in interdisciplinarity. It's at the core of who I am. So I would say that I don't have to have something that, my PhD, it's in social policy and public health. I have to have that written down. I believe that because of my own background, the way that I'm thinking and framing my own research, my own findings, my own discussions, I'm already bringing in to the discussion the components of the interdisciplinary approach. Now, there are definitely some challenges here, and I will give you an example. I worked, before I started my PhD journey, I worked with architects, actually, in terms of improving the quality of the housing quality for low socioeconomic population, groups of population.
Fantastic.
And the idea was, because the architects, you have the knowledge and the technical skills to improve the quality of life or the quality of the housing part, and we can understand how that can impact on people's lives and make the case for investments on that area. So it's an example how those bridges can be crossed and the gap can be reduced in terms of the way that we think and frame. Going back on my own research at the moment, I think I'm doing a little bit of the same, but in this case, I'm working with social scientists in general, with political science, with political actors. And I'm working at the EU level, European Union, to understand how certain social policies that, for example, access to social protection, social security for people that are self-employed, and how those policies that can be adopted at the European Union level can then be implemented at the country level, at the member states, and that will improve the quality and the social protection for those people. Because if they don't have access to that social protection, whenever they are sick, whenever they go unemployed, they will face risks that will affect definitely their health from a physical and mental health perspective. So I believe, again, that is the way that I frame myself in an interdisciplinary framework. It's based on my own experiences, and then I bridge that gap that way. There is one more thing, though, that I can say. It's about the language that we use, the terminologies. I don't know if you...
I think I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I would totally agree with that. That was, I think, one of the biggest challenges, especially in the formative years, like the first year and second year, to kind of like, okay, I understand SUDS with a very different terminology based on my background, and my approach at looking at them was more of a design perspective. And a civil engineer looks at a very different perspective, which was one of my supervisor. And then my mental psychologist come up with a very different kind of a question with regards to access to it, the visuals and all of that. So I think the terminology, especially when starting with the research and dealing with the research methodologies, I think that was something which was the most challenging to handle. I think I've wrapped my head around it, and my supervisors have helped, and we learned to work as a team. But yes, it still does remain as a challenge.
There is, and if I can, because there are, I struggle a little bit in the beginning for two reasons, even when I arrived here in Scotland, Edinburgh in particular, because one of the things were to start to work with people from different backgrounds, and the other one because of even the English language itself. So there are difficulties that are inherent to the way that we speak the language. Sometimes we are referring to the same things, right? But I believe that it was interesting to see how sometimes I would use some word, for example, some term expression, and someone would use another word or another expression would mean the same, but we wouldn't, like, there was a barrier there. It's like we were speaking different language, although we were meant to do, I think, in the end of the day, compromise and have that expectation that people on the other side have different views regarding what we say.
And as an interdisciplinary researcher, you have that kind of an ego kind of view where you're able to see from different disciplines. Like, I had to study more into the environment to learn about the laws and everything and all. I discovered that there's one policy that says polluters pay. Those that pollute are meant to pay. And I have a little there regarding that, because I think polluters should clean instead of paying. Because when they pay, how are we sure they're going to clean? And that's why the pollution has extended up to this time, and we're still facing the same issue. So I don't agree with that polluters pay idea. I think polluters should clean.
I think that's the language bit is so important. And I would add my 2 senses. You know, we also have language that we use inside academic settings, but it also sounds like a lot of our research, all of our research is also outward facing. And you have a whole other set of language that you use for the general public, for stakeholders, for communities. And so actually being bilingual in not just, well, a lot of you probably put me to shame, I don't even speak 2 languages, but actually the language that we use with our research. But I would also say that with my own research, depending on what department I'm speaking to or academic, you know, I'm thinking, okay, for my own research, do I big up the environment, the water, the nature, or am I bigging up the community and the people in the social science? Because sometimes you're trying to sell things or you're trying to, you know, explain your research, and you almost have to have these different things. I don't know if you had a similar experience.
Very much similar. So there are, like, what I've learned in this 2 years is that you need to know your audience. So there are, I would give an example of somewhere I went yesterday to present my work, and it was an acoustics group, a purely acoustics group. And because I'm working in soundscapes, they asked me to come and present whatever I'm working on as well. And I realized that none of the people who are sitting there are able to understand what exactly I'm talking about. I'm talking about soundscape with respect to people's perception. And they're all engineers or acoustic engineers or ecologists who are working on a very different domain. So it depends who your audience is, as you said, that whether you want to sell it up with respect to environment, where you want to weigh on that, or whether you want to weigh on the aspect of communities and people. It's something, it's always kind of how to strike that balance becomes a challenge. And it's still not easy. I'm still learning how to do that.
I totally agree with you. I presented in an international conference as well, and somebody asked me, nice presentation, but you didn't talk about the laws surrounding the environment. I'm like, okay, if you're not careful as an interdisciplinary researcher, you're going to be pulled from every side. So you have to be firm on what you're looking at. So I just said, okay, I'm not looking at that just now, but it's something I would like to take a look. But for this research, the laws are not necessarily what I'm looking at. So we have to be careful not to be pulled to directions where we don't want to go. So
I believe that it is a skill, right? So we know the audience that we are speaking to, and being effective in our communication. I think it's a very important skill. And interdisciplinary researchers, it's the core part of it, right? So I think we learn a lot how to speak in that sense, because we want to avoid to, what is the expression, to speak to the choir, right? You usually do that. So if we continue to speak, and I have that sense a lot within the health science community. Because we want to improve the public health, the population health, the levels of population health, right? Want to improve it through environmental action or accidental action, whatever. And if we continue to speak within the health science that we have to do that, of course we know that, but we are not the ones that will actually deliver those policies and implement those policies, right? And then deliver those actions and mobilize those communities. So I believe that is a skill that we learn in our journeys. At least I speak for myself, that I've been learning
Yeah.
to understand a little bit how can I change my language, adapt the core message that I want to use, what exercise should I put in practice, because otherwise it's like speaking a foreign language.
Yeah.
Honestly, if I go there with a very technical, specific concepts to a political actors, politicians, that they just want to know what they have to do and why. And
I totally agree.
how much money does it cost or whatever. Like if I'm going there and start to use those technical language, it's like I'm 1 minute after I lost.
You lost the contact with the audience.
One thing about communication is when your message is passed and the person you're sending it to actually decode what you're saying. If you're not making sense, you're not really communicating. So it's good to break it down to them and then be able to reach them at their level. So like you said, depending on where you're presenting, so you design your work to fit the area. That's what I think.
I think language is such a core part of all interdisciplinary research. And I especially liked what you were talking about when sometimes you said that people expect you to look at everything and you have to. I think back to when I was doing my undergraduate and I did my dissertation research on mangroves in Mexico in a very specific field. And actually that's easy to draw boundaries because you know that it's one specific place at one specific time doing one specific type of data collection, and it was easy to draw that boundary. But when you start going into interdisciplinary research, people want to throw everything and the kitchen sink into your research, and suddenly you feel like you maybe have a pressure to actually add all of these things. And I guess I'd love to ask you about your research from quite a logistical perspective. You know, do you feel it takes more time to do interdisciplinary research? Is it more effort? Is it harder? You know, you've got all these different, you know, João, when you were talking about all these people you work with, I'm even thinking logistically, they're in different departments, in different buildings, maybe even at different institutions. So, you know, actually logistically, when doing this research, do you find it harder, easier, or actually does it pay off in the end by making all of these connections?
Well, personally, I enjoy doing this. So I enjoy contact and reach out. I think we have to get out of our comfort zone. Yeah. Right? So that is the first step when we approach from an interdisciplinary research, or we approach an interdisciplinary research, we have to get out of our comfort zone. And well, logistically, it can be difficult, but nowadays, I think it's not that through the digital connections that we have and online meetings and everything. So we can cross those boundaries. We can cross them even by a simple LinkedIn connections, for example, and start a conversation. So all of those small mechanisms, we are breaking silos, right? Yeah. We are breaking those walls, those departmental, institutional walls that exist. That I think before it was harder. I don't think anymore. So it's more a matter of we are being open to do that and be open to to expose our own weaknesses as well. To know what we don't know.
Yep.
Because when we go and we start, I remember when I arrived at the university and I start to talk with this political science about terminology that I thought I knew, that after all I don't. And now, okay, so I have to study a little bit more, read a little bit more. But I think that is what also increases our knowledge and the pursuit of that knowledge for us to better communicate so it's not, we can work with different people, but and we can do all of those things, but I think it begins with us, and then after that we have to put probably sometimes a little bit more an effort, because if we don't, no one will force us usually in these kind of things. But if we do, I think then the rewards can be very, very good when we can cross those also.
Yeah, I think I would like to add to that as well. I think what you're saying regarding comfort and the learning process. So I think when I started, yes, you have to come out of your comfort zone, but I enjoy doing that. I like learning new things, but the harder part is unlearning whatever you've learned. So as you suggested, or as you recommended, that it starts from us. It started from me. I was motivated to do that. It wasn't that hard. As you said, with the resources available, people were supportive because already SUDS and soundscapes, the domains I'm looking at, are already interdisciplinary in nature. So people do understand that they are touched upon by different, domains in itself or inherently. However, the challenge was few times when communication was hindered. Like I am trying to explain or discuss supposing I'm trying to discuss a community aspect with a civil engineer. So it's just not reaching through. So that's how in the process I learned that how to moderate my conversation such that I make a mark. I think that's where it has been mostly, unlearning and relearning, and also talking to my supervisors. I think so, because they come from a very different domain than mine, or a very different understanding of what I've learned. So my writing style, my terminology, sometimes I would write and they would be baffled by the words I've used. So unlearning that has also been quite a journey.
I totally understand what you just said too, because I had to work on my own academic writing skills as well, because the way you write academically is different from the way you write when you're writing normally. And also that was a process for me. I had to learn and unlearn, like you said, as well, to be able to meet up to standard. And also interdisciplinary research is hard work. I won't lie, because some of the subjects, or will I say disciplines that you're reading is not what you've done before. So sometimes you're entering into a terrain that you've not been. So you really need to put yourself into it and read and read and read and be able to come up with something meaningful, because that terrain is new to you and you're trying to work something out. And it's really difficult to bring. Most people just do one aspect of this research, but you are doing 3 different aspects and bringing it together as one to make it make sense. And actually, so it's really hard work. And I think we're doing something noble, if you ask me. We should be proud of ourselves.
We just like to add something very small. There are times when I do end up feeling like an imposter as well.
Yeah.
Which is very common, because I think so. For example, if I'm talking to an environmental psychologist and I do not know the terminologies or the way they are talking, and I'm not able to make a conversation, or continue the conversation, because I feel I'll have to go back and reread or reassess whatever this is about. Or if I'm talking to a purely civil engineer, I do understand, but I might even have a roadblock in the conversation that how to take this further. And then that's when I suddenly feel like an imposter, and I feel the challenge that am I doing what I'm doing is correct or not, or I'm just strolling around in the woods.
Yeah.
So maybe the imposter syndrome, it's even harder for also seek more an interdisciplinary research than.
I think so.
I would say that nowadays, most of the research that are conducted out there, it's somehow interdisciplinary. So, but then we can call it, but then it depends on actually we use or not, or implement through an interdisciplinary approach, I think. But I feel that in the last couple of years, there is some efforts made by, academia in general, academia community, to say, okay, we have to do more. Simply because I would say, in my opinion, that at the end of the day, we want to translate our research, or we should, into the real world. And sometimes we know that we within the academia forget a little bit that part. So we work for ourselves, for our community, and then we forget that we should try to translate that. And I think we do interdisciplinary research for a reason, right? We do it because we think it's the best way to respond to the challenge of the world today.
Absolutely.
So otherwise we would say in any one of us in our niche corner.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that is a point that if we forget that last part in terms of the impact that we expect from the research we do, we are not thinking fairly, or we are not thinking in a way that actually all these efforts to conduct a real interdisciplinary research should pay off in terms of what we expect to implement in the future from those findings.
I think this is such a rich discussion, and certainly something that a word that is springing to mind is generosity, because I think as an interdisciplinary researcher, often you are a beneficiary of somebody else's generosity, explaining their part of their discipline and their expertise. But it's also for us to be generous in the research that we are doing, broadening out to capture everyone. And it's, you know, there's that phrase about it takes a village to raise a child. And I'm like, it takes a village to get a really good piece of research moving that's going to be impactful. And I guess I wanted, before bringing this amazing episode to an end, is I did want to ask about value though, because I think sometimes interdisciplinary research, or the pursuit of it, because I don't always know if we manage to get research that's fully interdisciplinary, but the pursuit of it can often be very positive. Like, it's going to be amazing, it's going to solve everything. And I guess I've heard challenges throughout all of you who've been sharing. You know, you've given challenges around time, around imposter syndrome, around the logistics. But actually, do you think that in academia we value interdisciplinary researchers? The phrase jack of all trades, master of none, it kind of jumps to mind. But you know, do you feel we value it as a career, you know, as a path, knowing that as an interdisciplinary researcher, you might never be #1 researcher of your really specific thing, but actually you could be an incredible facilitator of interdisciplinary research. What's your thoughts on, the value of being an interdisciplinary academic?
Okay, so I started with architecture, I went into urban planning, and when we were studying urban planning, we were always told that if you're an urban planner, you are jack of all trades, but you're master of none. So I think I've carried that forward, and now I'm an interdisciplinary researcher, and I feel the same again. More so now because I've expanded more from the urban planning and just not just limiting there. I mean, I'm using VR, I'm designing the urban space, I'm analyzing it using environmental psychology indicators. I am looking, and when I've designed it, I've picked up from civil engineering drawings to do that. So now I do feel that I don't know where I fit in, to be honest, like in the larger scheme of things. When I have to sit back at my table and my chair thinking about, okay, where does my career go next? And where do I apply and how do I sell myself? That's something which I do feel like ringing in the back of my head. But I do still feel that I think I have got many skills and they can be taken forward and I can like fit in anywhere. So I think people like me would be still in demand somewhere in the industry or in academia. I feel academia would be a little harder because it's still very discipline specific, but with respect to industry, maybe they are more open. That's my conjecture.
Can I disagree a little bit?
Sure, of course.
No, because I believe that the real world is breaking into disciplines as well, right? And disciplines are very important. So because they help us structure and navigate outside the complex world that we live in. So we just can't have like random or like everything everywhere. So we learn that break down things is important. It helps us organize our societies. We help to deliver better what is essential. But of course, it's not enough. And so we have to find ways of, because we then, from there, I think we sometimes we enter in this vicious cycle when we create those big or tall walls in a way that then we don't even see each other anymore. But I think it's not, this is a structural part of the world that we live in. But then there is something in us. And we can think about that. So I think sometimes we don't have to call ourselves interdisciplinary research. I think, again, it depends on, we can wear different hats depending to whom we are speaking to. And I think that could be useful for us, could be a good tactic for us that like interdisciplinary research, interdisciplinary practice, interdisciplinary works. Because it's a reflection that I did a few times now, that what do I call myself? To not be the expression that you used,
Jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades. Because because otherwise I'm navigating completely without any direction. So it helps me frame myself. I can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hats, the number of hats, but it's my own agency that I can use in saying, in this kind of context, I can use this hat or that hat, and I can speak and because again, it's about being effective in our academic journey, in our daily jobs, and that's why I think we should use disciplines into our advantage as an interdisciplinary researcher or interdisciplinary practitioner.
I would agree with that. I would add to that as well that I think it's more about the skills that you gain rather than identifying yourself, putting yourself again into a box that, as you said, like I am an interdisciplinary researcher. So just say that I am a researcher.
Put yourself in a box again.
Becomes a box.
Exactly.
That's what,
that's true.
rather not to put yourself in a box that I am an interdisciplinary researcher, but I am a researcher who looks into this, and I'm skilled at this. Maybe that's how you break the boundaries rather than kind of like enlarging creating another new boundary in a box, unlike all the other disciplines which already exist and, as you said, have created huge walls. You can't look at each other.
I think the world is moving towards interconnectivity. We cannot really do research like we normally do in the past, because now you can see that the world even now has become a global village. So it's interconnected somehow. Before, you cannot be like in another country and you call another country immediately, but that happens now. It's instant. You can transfer money instant. Those things are happening due to interconnectivity. So we cannot really do that silo kind of thing anymore. The world is connected. It has become interdisciplinary. We just have to accept it and then use it to our advantage. I think so.
That's been such a rich discussion. And I think to end, I've got a question, because I started by saying, what discipline are you from?
Yeah.
And we got various answers. But I would love to know, do you think we need disciplines?
That's something to think about.
Yeah.
I think we still do need disciplines, but we do need people who are in particular disciplines also to have now open minds to kind of like be able to work with a different team from a different discipline as well. And also kind of like not be rigid with respect to language. I think language is a big barrier there. I'm not talking with respect to like your dialect or language. I'm talking about the language that a specific domain has. For example, a psychologist in the academic world would be having a very different type of terminology or a writing style which is very specific to that domain. A social psychologist would be writing in a very different way, and environmental researcher or somebody working with social policy would be writing in a very different way. I think that's something which can be bridged, which might help in sort of like coming over the strictness of disciplines as we feel today. But I do still feel that having that discipline like as an overarching thing should help and, you know, keeping the structure smooth. And as I think he mentioned as before as well, it helps in organizing, and there's no harm in doing that.
Variety, they say, is spice of life. If you want to just stick to one discipline, that's okay. But if you feel you want to be an interdisciplinary researcher, you can be one. So whatever you want, I guess.
Yeah. Well, if we look to the achievements that science was able to do in the last 100, 200 years, disciplines were a very important part of that. Economics didn't exist 200 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe Adam Smith from this country was the one creating economics as a discipline.
Yes.
Political science didn't exist. Right?
Yeah.
Within health sciences, all the developments in the specific disciplines and sub-disciplines that help develop these molecules, to develop these kind of medicines and vaccines and everything. So we need that kind of core technique, scientific, specific areas within disciplines to produce products and develop areas.
Innovations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In terms of innovations that are very, very important to progress and develop the world as it is. But it goes back to this idea that sometimes we don't have to be within those areas so much, because it's very easy, because it creates this area of comfort again, and it's very hard for us then to break out of those. And sometimes, and we can see that now, that when we find so much better solutions, or we found already so much good solutions for most of the problems in the world. The new ones usually require to think not just within our discipline, but across discipline. And I think that is the challenge that I see for our current Center for Science in the foreseen future.
Yeah. And I think that's such a lovely place actually to land this episode, is recognizing the power of disciplines, what that's done for science and the world up until now, but also looking forward, as you were mentioning, Blessing, about the fact that we do have this connected world and we as researchers need to be part of that. Yeah. But actually it's about, and you mentioned this at the beginning, actually, you felt like it was your person, your values was interdisciplinary. It's about us fostering that and allowing researchers and academics to move forward. So Jivantika, João and Blessing, thank you so much for being on this episode, and we wish you well with your PhD
Thank you so
research.
much for having us.
I know, and we look forward to all of us finishing, and we look forward to seeing your outputs, and we're excited by that. So thank you all for joining us.
Thank you for having us today.
No worries. When Disciplines Meet is hosted by me, Laura Young, recorded at the Podcast Studio Glasgow, and edited by the operations team at the Scottish Graduate School of Social Science. The podcast was conceived by SGSSS's Deputy Director for Training, Dr. Katie Keenan, and Associate Director, Dr. Roxanne Connolly. SGSSS is funded by the Economic and Social Research Council and the Scottish Funding Council and our 16 partner universities. To find out more about the Scottish Graduate School of Social Science, you can visit our website at www.sgsss.ac.uk. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.